Okay, so now that that's understood, what is the topic of today's video? So this is going to be an interesting topic. This is definitely the first time that I've covered this, and I know a lot of people are interested into hearing my take on this specific subject. So what we're going to be talking about is who are the Anunnaki, who are the Nephilim, and who are the Watchers. And I'm going to give you my perspective on what I know about the Anunnaki, Watchers, and Nephilim from somebody who is a full initiate of the darker side of Kabbalah. So that means I've worked with a lot of reptilian, draconian, extraterrestrial types of technologies and, once again, energies. Okay? So if you want to know a little bit more about these three different species of being and a little bit more about how the human being came to be, then this is your video, so stay tuned. Okay, so let's start here. So let's break down the Anunnaki idea in a nutshell. Okay? So basically, the way that humans were formed in the Anunnaki theory is that there was a different species from another planet known as the Anunnaki, and it came down to Earth for a purpose, and its purpose was to create a being that could essentially be a servant to mine, most likely gold, but basically be a servant to mine things like metals and harvest certain things for this Anunnaki species and their planet. So whenever they come back around and come to Earth, they can gather what has been harvested by the being they created, the human. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. So how was the human formed in the Anunnaki theory? So basically the Anunnaki is coming from a whole nother planet, and it's said to be coming from the 10th planet known as Nibiru or Nibiru. I think I'm saying that right, Nibiru. But it's known as the 10th planet. It's not really talked about too often. And this planet, every now and then, cycles really close to Earth. It spins, and it comes close to Earth during a certain period of time in evolution. And it's said that at that certain point, when it's closest to Earth, that is when the Anunnaki come over and literally come down to Earth to collect what has been harvested, or that's at least what their purpose originally was for creating the human. So let's explain this. So how was the human formed? So the human being was created in the Anunnaki theory by genetic manipulation. Okay, so these Anunnakis, which I personally 100% believe to be a reptilian race, they genetically modified. They have higher levels of technology than what we do now in regards to gene surgery, and they genetically modified a human being using a certain DNA strand, which was what we are, the human, and mixing it with a Neanderthal type monkey being. It was like a tall monkey, basically, that lived before us as humans. That was the original humanoid type of species. It was like this tall monkey being. Okay? And this Anunnaki came down to Earth, mixed the DNA of this humanoid monkey species with some other sort of DNA strand that we are as the human being. And it mixed these two together, and then we come about. Okay? So I don't know exactly what this other DNA strand exactly was, but it was something that was programmed to basically be a slave. Like, comes with the ego, comes with self-importance, sense of self, and those are primary things. programmed to follow orders, programmed to be in a universe A objective state of mind to be able to follow orders. And vulnerable to psychic influence, very, very vulnerable to psychic influence, because the Anunnaki want to psychically influence this human species to be a slave. So once again, the Anunnaki took this DNA strand and mixed it with this other monkey species that we can call the Neanderthal, and put it together, and it created what we are now, as I said. Okay? So then we hear about stories of the Nephilim and of the Watchers and the Anunnaki, once again, that have come down either from the heavens or from the skies, or have just descended in general to Earth, and then started mating with the women of the human species. Okay, so this is very fascinating. So first thing I want to say is that there is some symbolism in regards to the Bible, where we have the story of Adam and Eve, and it is said that Eve was created from Adam's rib. So a lot of people would be confused about that, because they're like, okay, well, women are the ones that give birth. Okay, how did the man create Eve? It doesn't really make sense. Well, originally, because of this Anunnaki being species, let's say reptilian species, when they created the human being, it actually started off with man. This is my personal belief, okay? And this is basing it off of other studies done on this subject. So they originally created a species of only men, primarily so that they couldn't breed, so that they could be a controlled species. And the way that they would create one and then another was through cloning DNA. And then what ended up happening is there was a certain point, in the evolution of the human being, starting with the man, where the Anunnaki realized, they basically realize they're making progress, but they're not making as much as they want, because they're having to create copies of this DNA, and they're the ones that are breeding the human. So that's obviously going to take time and effort to do that. So eventually it got to the point where these Anunnaki decided to create another being, which was the woman. So now it would be a man and a woman. So they decided to create a woman and then make her fertile so that the human being could start reproducing on its own. And in the Anunnaki's mind, and what they believed was that this would be able to repopulate the human being race, to a much larger degree, so that they can be better slaves. There can be more slaves, more work can get done, more materials, specifically metals, can get harvested. So that's what happened. So human beings started mating. Now, the difference is, this is something the Anunnaki weren't aware of, is how fast the human being was going to actually evolve. Okay, so when they mixed the DNA that they had, whatever DNA it was, I personally believe it was definitely something extraterrestrial mixed with this Neanderthal monkey type of species. Because we're beings that exist on planet Earth, which is literally one of the most organic planets that exists, we as human beings started evolving way quicker than what these Anunnaki believed was going to happen. So essentially, the Anunnaki started recognizing that we were getting very smart, and we were starting to rebel against certain slave mentalities. And not only rebel, but we were starting to pursue different aspects of our being, which were psychic in nature, which actually gave us more power than these extraterrestrial beings. Because, and when I say extraterrestrial beings, I'm referring to the Anunnaki, because primarily we are on Earth, which gives us a natural link to evolution itself. So because we're beings that live here on Earth and exist on the most physical plane, we have a direct link to the source that exists as the creator of the megaverse. Okay? This is basically, Earth is a very important planet. Okay? That's why these Anunnaki wanted to create a slave race on Earth to get materials from Earth to their planet. Okay? This is my perspective on the subject. And once again, living on Earth, being these created species, you could think of it as an overarching orchestrated plan by the source itself that influenced these Anunnaki to create us as the human beings. Little did the Anunnaki know that we were going to evolve to the degree we did, but this was all in the scope of evolution itself, and Source had this all programmed. So this is what happened. Now we're here. And we actually have higher potential psychic abilities and powers than these Anunnaki. So, once again, we hear the story that these Anunnaki, the Nephilim and the Watchers, have come down from the skies, have descended from the heavens, and then, have essentially come down to Earth. We hear this, and they've mated with certain women. Okay? So that this is very fascinating. Why is this fascinating? Because now we're starting to get an idea of certain extraterrestrial bloodlines, certain powerful bloodlines that carry this direct Anunnaki reptilian genetic code from these Anunnaki, Nephilim, and Watchers that have mated with the human women that lived on Earth. So these women that have mated with these Anunnaki produced children that were direct mix between Anunnaki and human being. And this has gone throughout many, 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 many years, thousands of years. And I believe in the text it says there was 200 Anunnaki or 200 Watchers of Nephilim that had come down, mated with the women, and then they went back to their planet, and that was enough to spread the bloodline of the Anunnaki here on Earth, mixed in with the humans. Okay? So that is very fascinating. And why is that fascinating? Because when it comes to the darker side of the Tree of Life, specifically the Clip-Off and Universe B of the Clip-Off and the Tunnels of Set, you notice that the backside of the Clip-Off is ruled by reptilian energies. It's ruled by draconian energies. Okay? It's almost as if it is a system, an astral structured system that was created by these Nephilim and by these Anunnakis and by these Watchers. And that means that the people that have the stronger bloodline of Anunnaki genetic code or Nephilim genetic code or Watcher genetic code, that means they're going to have a stronger affinity towards the darker side of evolution, towards the more so hidden draconian side of evolution. And this is why there's some people that naturally gravitate towards the occult and dive right into the backside of the tree, the Clip-Off and the Tunnels of Set. Okay, this is why there's some people that, once again, just have that natural affinity for understanding dark matter energy and inorganic energy to a higher degree than what most people can even grasp. Most people are afraid. Most people try to run away from this reality of embracing, the darker side of the being and the world around us. So it just really fascinates me that when it comes to the Nephilim are simply, to my belief, they are a reptilian race that is also known as the Annunaki, and are also known as the Watchers, and they live on this other planet. But they've, at some point in time, I don't know the exact date, I don't know exactly when, but it's thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, they created the human. From the man, they created a woman. Then they made the woman fertile. Then the man and the woman started reproducing. And then when there was enough of the population of human beings on Earth, then they came from their planet once again, descended 200 Anunnaki, 200 Nephilim, and started intermingling and mating with the women on our planet. And specifically, it was also said that these Nephilim knew how to take the shape of beautiful beings. So although they may have been reptilian dominant, that doesn't necessarily mean that they looked totally like reptiles, or at least on our planet. Maybe they had the ability to shapeshift. I don't know. This is just speculation. But they definitely have a reptilian type of energy to them, a draconian type of energy field that is beyond what we naturally are. So, and once again, they may have had the ability to shapeshift physically, okay? But this is just speculation, so this is food for thought, okay? And then once again, they mated with the human being, and the women gave birth to these half human, half Anunnaki beings. And over time, that Anunnaki bloodline diluted itself, but it stayed alive. And some bloodlines carry stronger genetic codes to these Nephilim, to these Anunnakis, and these Watchers. And once again, that is why people sometimes are naturally inclined towards diving into the darker sides of the occult in general. There's a lot of people that want to just stay with the Sephiroth, and all they want to do is look at the Sephiroth, and they just want to do light working, right? And I don't believe that's the right path to take, because I don't think it's the most effective unless you understand the whole picture. But then there's some people, like myself, that just naturally gravitate towards what they know is true by trusting their intuition. It's like it's in our blood, where you're just naturally gravitating towards the darker side because you understand the roots of the tree of life are the most important part of the entire tree. Because if there was no roots, there was no foundation whatsoever. That means there's no upper tree without the root system first. You can't plant a tree without planting the seed. Okay? And this even comes into speculation of when it comes to the clip-off, which is the underworld, and when it comes to the tunnels of Set, and which is behind the 22 tunnels of Set, which is behind the Sephiroth, there's a lot of speculation, and there's like proof to all this stuff. I mean, you can look it up. There's been a lot of ancient tunnel systems that have been found underground. Okay, and it's even said somewhere around 12,800 years was when the Earth did a reset. Basically, a mass flood happened, and the theory is said to be caused from a comet that crashed down on some icebergs that were huge icebergs. I mean, they were so long, they were so big, and they stretched out for miles. And this huge comet came and crashed down on them, and they were in the ocean. And it produced it produced mass flooding. instantly melted all those icebergs, and it landed in the ocean, producing tsunamis and all that stuff. And that literally wiped out the majority of mankind. Not all of them, not everyone, but the majority. So that was said to have happened 12,800 years ago. And it was said that the people that survived during the ice age of that time frame, because after that comet crash, there was all this basically debris that went up into the atmosphere and made it dark for 1,000 years after. So it's said that the humans that survived after that went underground, and they found tunnel systems, or they even created tunnel systems. And this is where the whole understanding of the underworld comes from, and the bottom of the tree of life, and the 22 tunnels of Set. Okay? It all comes from physical reality. You know, as above, so below. As within, as without. So, although the tree of life in its totality is an astral structure and creation, that astral structure and creation can also be created in the physical plane. So there's just a lot of mysterious things that go behind that. But the main idea is that I know the Qliphoth and the tunnels of Set are primarily ruled by draconian reptilian energies. So it would only make sense that this Anunnaki Nephilim Watchers race must be reptilian, and it's documented through many ancient cultures that there were these dragons, these dragon-type beings that were coming from the sky, these aquatic beings, reptilian in nature. It would only make sense that they were reptilian, because they, I can guarantee, are the ones that helped to program this entire structure that we know as the Tree of Life, which is the Sephiroth, the Qliphoth, Universe A, and Universe B. And as I've been initiating through the Qliphoth, like when I did initiate through the Qliphoth, and I was going through the tunnels of Set, you see tons of reptilian symbolism going through those initiations. You come across a lot of like understandings of reptilians, reptilian consciousness, and the Anunnakis and the Nephilim and the Watchers become very prominent. Like, you come across that through your Qliphothic initiations. When you're working through the Qliphoth and you're traveling through the 22 tunnels of Set, you're having encounters with dark forces, you know, archdemons. And as you're having these encounters and you're traveling through these different dimensions of the underworld, you come across the Anunnaki. You come across this theory of once again, the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, the Watchers. It comes up, and it is a deep subject to study, but it does come up, and it seems to really make sense that this other being that created us originally to be slaves now recognizes that we're not slaves, and is having to allow us to use their technology because it exists. It exists. Like the Tree of Life is very real. And I believe it was created by these reptilian beings. That's why the whole tree, in the darkest aspects of it, is primarily reptilian. It's ruled by dragons. And dragons are also connected to earth energy spirals, and those are connected to source itself. So draconian technology, draconian energy is extremely powerful. Okay, it's very, very, very powerful. And it has to do with our solar system. It has to do with different constellations. That's what makes it so powerful. And there's a lot more studying that I want to do on this subject for sure. But I just thought I would share the knowledge that I have. I think this could offer somebody value. yeah, it's just really fascinating. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to go too crazy because I don't want to share stuff that I don't know. So okay, so let's start here. Let's start with understanding a little bit more so about the Watchers in general. So the Watchers were mentioned in the Bible, and they were basically painted in a way where they were formed to be demonic. Okay, so the Watchers were, from a biblical perspective, translated into something evil, something demonic, and they basically came down to earth and taught human beings about certain areas of knowledge that was essentially very advanced, and certain levels of science that were very advanced that the human species could potentially use. Okay, but once again, within the biblical lens, the Watchers were demonized. They were labeled as evil. Therefore, you want to stay away from that type of being, so to speak. Okay. Now, obviously, the religious lens is going to create these dualistic perspectives because that's a great way to control your consciousness and prevent you from gaining knowledge and eventually turning that knowledge into power. Okay. So the point that I really want to make, though, within this context is the importance of a watcher. Okay. So obviously, if the Bible is going to be mentioning the word watchers, right, there has to be, okay, there has to be some sort of significance to what this type of energy represents or what this type of being represents. Okay, there has to be some significance to it. So that's important to understand. Although we see within biblical text, they mention these types of things and they demonize it, they make it look evil, they make it look like you should stay away from it. If you're really observing biblical text and religious text from the state of trying to understand, then you can obviously pick some pieces out of that and recognize, wow, if it's telling me to stay away and repress this energy or this entity of whatever a watcher is, then maybe there's some importance to what a watcher represents, and maybe I should embrace that. Okay, that's only if you're really trying to develop yourself and really, eventually get to your highest potential. Okay, this is the type of mindset that you want to have. This is the type of behavior that you want to be approaching these things with. Okay, so the watchers in general are important to understand, and I want to let you know right now, as you're listening to me speak, I am a watcher. Okay, I am a real life watcher. Okay, and I am not the only person on the planet that is a watcher. I am a watcher. There's not too many watchers on our planet in correspondence to the mass collective, the majority of the human species. Anyone has the potential to become a watcher. Now, obviously, there's certain factors that come into play with your bloodline, your ancestral genetic code, and what types of previous experiences you've had on a more so interdimensional level as to why you would be a watcher in this lifetime from an evolutionary perspective. But the point that I'm trying to make is that I am a watcher. I'm a real watcher. I'm going to be discussing exactly what a watcher is throughout this video, coming from the perspective of a real life watcher. And one of the main things that I'm really going to do in regards to this breakdown is really demystify what a lot of people may have created in their own mindsets or their own perspectives from, opinions and things of that nature as to what they think the watcher is. Because I'm telling you right now, the watchers are not some weird looking, alien-like, reptilian-like creatures that are walking on our planet today. I promise you this, okay? Now, I'm not saying that aliens don't exist. I'm not saying that reptilian types of beings don't exist in our universe and in the, in different multiverses. That I believe that 100%. It's a fact. But once again, I am a watcher, okay? It's not what you might think it is. And at the same time,
it is what you think it is. The Watchers are very powerful, and I just want to make it clear that I'm going to be giving you the breakdown and the perspective and the knowledge of what a real life Watcher is from being a real life Watcher. Okay, and I'm also going to explain to you how you really become a Watcher. Okay, in our today's time. Okay. Now, once again, I am not the only Watcher on our planet today. There are other people who are literally on this planet right now that are Watchers. Okay, there are hundreds of them. Okay, now when you compare it to the entire mass collective population, there's very few. There's like 1% of human species that are actually Watchers. Okay, but the point that I'm trying to make is this idea in this archetype, or we could even say this entity of the Watcher, is a real life thing, and it does exist. And the Watchers are here right now, and they've actually been here for some time. I mean, ever since the Watchers will always be around. Let's put it that way. Whenever the human species existed, there was Watchers. Okay, there has to be Watchers. So let's go into it. So let's start breaking this down, because I know a lot of you listening, some of you understand what I'm saying. I'm sure some of you resonate, and then other groups of you are hearing what I'm saying, and you're so caught up in the religious archetype and the religious perspective of what you thought a Watcher was, which may have appeared to you as some alien-like creature that looks, completely strange and looks weird, or some reptilian type of being that exists on our planets, whatever the case is. That's typically the religious lens that was programmed into a lot of people's perspectives on some of these topics. But let's be a little bit more practical, and let's get a little bit more realistic. And I promise you, I'm a real life Watcher. Okay, so let's explain it. So what exactly is a Watcher? Let's break it down to its deeper layers. Okay, but let's start with the surface. The word Watcher represents what? Okay, someone who watches. Okay, someone who looks, someone who observes the world around them. Okay, so we can see a direct connection to the word itself of this archetypal energy, of this type of being. Within its name, the Watcher is someone who observes. Okay, someone who is receptive and observes. Okay, so anyone who is an observer of the mass collective, of their environment, of themselves, and of the world around them, they are watching. Okay, just like you turn on your TV, you look at your phone screen, you scroll through social media, you're watching the screen. Okay, you're watching. Okay, so we can see that within the word Watcher, we have a being, we have a person who is a intense observer, someone who is observing things to a much more profound and deep degree than the average person on our planet. Okay? Now, the next question is, okay, well, how do you essentially become a Watcher? Okay? What transitions a regular human being into being considered a Watcher? Okay? There are levels to observation. There are levels to how someone becomes an observer. And all of these different levels of achieving deeper states and more profound states of observation have everything to do simultaneously with the level that you're diving into your own unconscious and subconscious mind. Okay? Now, when it comes to the occult field, okay, when it comes to the hidden field of science and practical practices that you can apply that are based on interdimensional sciences that cause physical change here on our planet, this is what is important to understand in regards to how you become a Watcher. Okay? So there's a direct link and there's a direct tie to deep levels of occult, which is hidden, spiritual, psychological, emotional, mental, and physical initiations within the occult field, okay, which represents hidden pathways, hidden practices that literally trigger evolutionary events in your real life that then transform you on an internal level. Okay, so what I'm basically saying is that there's a connection between occult initiation and developing deeper states of awareness. Okay, as you're developing deeper states of awareness, you're becoming more of an observer. You're becoming more of a watcher. Okay, now there's a difference between someone who's just your typical, occult initiate, even within a lot of occult orders, where you're initiating through the tree of life. You're trying to travel from Mount Kuth to then get to Kether. And then, at the end of that, you essentially are a high-level initiate, okay? The Kabbalistic tree is way deeper than just the front side of the tree of life. The Kabbalistic tree is way deeper and much more dynamic than just the Sephiroth, okay? There is a tree of death. There is a root system to the tree itself. And the root system of the tree itself is known from a Judaic perspective as the klipoth. Okay, klipoth in Hebrew translates to shells. Okay, it is the tree of death where you really start to understand and start to come face to face with the very deep levels of your own personal, unconscious and subconscious mind, as well as the mass collectives. Okay, so in a nutshell, the tree of life, the Sephiroth, is the Garden of Eden. The tree of death, the klipoth, is the Garden of Edom. This would be the underworld. The Sephiroth would be like heaven. The klipoth would be the underworld. Okay, so the reason why the Watchers get depicted as being evil, dark, and demonic is because in the first place, to become a Watcher, you actually have to travel into the underworld to develop that relationship, that deep relationship with your own unconscious and subconscious mind. So one, that you fully understand it, and then you can start using it to your advantage, because a byproduct of becoming aware of your own personal deep unconscious and subconscious mind is that you start to reprogram those areas of your unconscious and subconscious to actually start working for you. Okay, this is just a natural process that takes place simply by actively allowing yourself to go in to your deep unconscious and subconscious mind. Because literally, you listening to this right now, the only thing that prevents you from getting what you want out of life in the way that you want to get it, and just really from understanding who you are and what you're here doing, is literally your ego. Okay? It is the part of your brain, it's a part of your conscious design that was programmed into you at some point in time through the humanoid species. There was this thing called an ego. And this ego had one purpose, and it was to stay alive. It was to survive. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is actually a part of the evolutionary process on this planet. But if you do not understand your true primal roots in regards to your energetic makeup, which goes into your soul and then goes into your spirit and then recognizes you have an ego, okay? If you do not start to understand that you have a primal nature, that you do have a soul, and that soul is based in the void. The soul came from the dark energy space of the universe. It was birthed from the dark mother, so to speak. It was birthed from the womb of chaos. That's literally where your soul came from. It was dreamed from that dark energy, okay? If you don't understand this, then what will happen is you will identify with your ego and you will think your ego is you, and you will never become aware of your primal nature, which is in correspondence to the feminine aspects of your energetic being, because the soul was birthed from that ultimate dark mother feminine energy. Okay, so that's why the soul is considered to be feminine. So when you're identifying with just your ego, then what's going to happen naturally for anybody, male or female or whatever you are, you're going to start repressing the feminine aspect of your energetic being. Okay, and this is going to further build up what's within your unconscious and your subconscious mind as you're simultaneously identifying with your ego, which is locked into the five senses, which is locked into physical and material dimension, and your own unconscious and subconscious mind will start to destroy you from that point. Okay, it will literally be the part of yourself that you're not embracing that starts to destroy you, unless you can learn how to surrender your ego to yourself, literally learn how to go through or allow yourself to go through some form of an ego death to then become more aware of your internal primal nature, which is the soul. Okay, so once again, what I'm saying here in regards to being a watcher and how this all connects to being a watcher is we are the rare beings on this planet that understand everything comes from void. We are the rare beings that exist. And once again, there may be a bloodline significance to this. There very well may be some sort of genetic code significance to this, which means your ancestors or your more so immediate ancestors may have gone through this process of recognition and realization, and then that carries into your bloodline leading up into our today's time, just hypothetically speaking, if we're talking about today's time. Basically what I'm saying is you may have shamanic ancestors that intuitively knew these truths that I'm talking about, and that shamanic ancestry, that shamanic awareness then carried into your bloodline. So it may be easier for you to recognize these deep truths of the true primal nature of the human species, which is the soul. Okay? So this would basically mean that your ancestors were watchers, whether they were, whatever they were. Okay? Your ancestors, if they had that deep awareness of where the soul really comes from, then that's what a watcher is, because that means your ancestors would have been very profound observers, because you have to be a very profound observer to even come to that awareness. Okay? So once again, that can carry down the bloodline, and it can travel into you as the person who's listening to this now. Okay? And there's other factors that can come into play on a more so interdimensional level as well, in regards to what your soul, your astral body actually has done before. Okay, so you hear people talk about past lives and things of that nature. Well, your soul, your own astral body, may have gone through this process physically on this planet many times over. So it knows the patterns, and it knows the pathways, and it knows the archetypes that you physically need to go through to re-remember what you are and who you are. And if your soul is empowered enough and you have that level of a powerful soul, and you've done that many times, then your soul itself, not only does it travel through your ancestorship and through your genetic code, but it also will influence you on that soul level, energetically speaking, by triggering the right processes to take place for you to step back into the awareness of your soul. And whenever I say the word soul, you can literally think of that as being your astral body. Okay? Your astral body is what literally dictates everything you do, and it tries to do whatever it can to get your awareness to reintegrate your conscious awareness back into your soul, back into your astral body. The only thing that prevents that from taking place is the ego. The ego likes to believe other things. It likes to create ideas that it latches onto and it attaches to. which actually can prevent that communication between your soul, your astral body, to your physical body. Okay, and it's all due to your own ego. It's all due to your own beliefs and your own program that you identify with. Okay, so just making sure that's clear. The Watchers, as I said, understand the true nature of their soul, which is void. And I'm telling you this, all the Watchers understand they come from darkness. Okay, not only do the Watchers understand that, but they understand that the entire human species comes from darkness. Okay, the Watchers understand that the human soul, the soul of you listening to this, the astral body of you listening to this, came from the void. It came from dark energy spaces within the universe, and it was dreamt into being by we could call it the Dark Mother. Okay, there's many names for it throughout different cultures. Some people call it the Tiamat. Some people call it the Black Dragon, the Dark Mother, the Amalek, which represents mother strength. Everyone's soul came into being from that dark, feminine, motherly energy. Okay, and this is what the Watchers understand. Okay, so what that means is that the Watchers are aware of the human species nature, primal nature. Okay, once again, recognizing that you listening to this, your soul comes from that darkness. It comes from the void. Okay, so because the Watchers are aware of this, in our lifetime, I'm going to start speaking for myself now. In my lifetime, what I was very easily able to recognize once I allowed myself to die to my ego, that was the whole part that I needed to really embrace to get caught in this momentum of self-development for myself. Once I allowed myself to die to my ego over and over and over again, once I finally came to terms with that, I started to recognize that it's within that same darkness. It's within those really deep areas of our multiverse today, which represent my own deep unconscious and subconscious mind, as well as the mass collective's deep unconscious and subconscious. I recognized that's where my primal nature was. I recognized that's where my soul came into being. So because I understood this on an intuitive level, I started listening to what my soul was communicating with me. Now, my soul communicates through the intuition, and that's for anybody. The soul, the voice of the intuition, is the voice of the soul, okay? And it's feminine in nature. Notice that, okay? So the Watcher, me as a Watcher, what I recognize is that within these dark areas of our multiverse that are considered evil, dark, demonic, from the religious lens, they are promoted as things you need to repress and stay away from. My primal nature, my intuition said, these are the exact areas that are told to be repressed, but you need to go through those. You need to experience all of them, and you need to understand what they represent. And in that process of you embracing, experiencing, and understanding them, you will be getting closer to your soul, which is me. Okay, this is what my intuition was communicating to me. It was basically saying, you need to experience the totality of the multiverse, not just what you want, not just what your ego wants to identify with and create because it feels good, but you need to understand the multiverse for what it is and what it represents from an evolutionary perspective. Why is the multiverse set up the way it is? Is it that the world we live in is evil? Or is there actually a deeper evolutionary purpose as to why we live in times that reflect the events that we're seeing in our today's time? Okay? So, long story short, this is something that I recognized as a Watcher. I dove into very dark areas of my unconscious and subconscious, which naturally led me to deep occult initiation into the underworld. So this would be considered deep occult initiation into the Qliphothic realm. Okay. Now, as I clip off this started to knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and simultaneously power. Okay. Now, keep in mind, going through the clip off and entering into the underworld is not an easy experience. Most people that go into that level of initiation and try to trigger that transformation, most people fail because they do not know how serious that level of transformation is. They are not ready to go through that level of alchemical change. Okay, that is most people. Okay, literally 1 out of, I would say, about things, but they don't understand how that's actually developed within the physical body and the energy field. And they don't understand that it's actually the process of getting back to your soul. It's basically your spirit traveling through the underworld, getting back to the void, where it can then re-link into the soul, and then the soul can link into the source. Okay, and then it comes back as a god on the planet. It comes back as a ruler within the multiverse, within your own rights. Okay, so this is something that I understood intuitively, and that intuition led me to initiation within the occult field, deep initiation, real initiation through the underworld, through the clip off. And once again, just to make sure it's clear, the underworld is representing the deepest areas and the deepest layers of the personal unconscious and subconscious mind, as well as the mass collective's deep unconscious and subconscious mind. Everything about the underworld, everything about the clipothic realm is primal in nature. Okay, and I've discussed in other videos that I've created that the clip-off was created before the Sephiroth. Essentially, the way you can look at it as the roots of the tree had to come before the top half and the fruits that were on the tree. Okay, that's the difference between the clip-off and the Sephiroth. Okay, so long story short, this is something that I was naturally drawn towards, and I took that level of transformation and initiation very seriously, and I dedicated a couple years of my life going into that. Okay, that's literally why I'm here now, and I have a successful YouTube channel doing what I do, doing what I love to do, speaking about these types of things. And it all, came from, what I was naturally drawn towards. Okay, I was naturally pulled towards this level of initiation, and now I'm here, and I'm actually doing exactly what a watcher does. If you actually look at the archetype of what the watcher represents, okay, I'm here sharing some of these deep occult truths, and I'm breaking down some of these interdimensional sciences on my channel, on my Patreon, and just what I do in general. So I'm literally emanating the exact archetype of what a watcher represents when you read about them. But long story short, this is what a watcher does. The watchers go into the underworld, and then they learn about the underworld, and then they learn how to manipulate it, and they learn how to control it. Okay? This is very key for you to understand as you're listening to this now. The watchers learn about the underworld. They recognize the underworld is part of primal evolution, and they recognize it's the only pathway to getting to your soul's deepest connection. I mean, think of it like this. Right? You have the Sephiroth, the tree of life, and that's like a maze within its own rights. Think of it like a maze. And you have to get through that maze to then get to the other side where you want to be. So you're not in the maze anymore, right? You have more freedom once you're outside of the maze, okay? Then once that maze is over, then you see another maze, okay? And this other maze is a maze you have to go through when it's dark out, okay? So let's say the first maze with the Sephiroth, there was lights. Now the second maze that appears is dark, okay? It's literally like you can't even see the walls of the maze. You literally have to feel your way through the entire maze, and you have to listen to your intuition, and you have to, keep running into the same mistakes and then figure out and learn from your mistakes. This is exactly what takes place in regards to the initiatory process within the occult field to its deepest levels. And I want you to understand this. There are many, many, many quote unquote high level occultists, high grade magicians that do not understand this. So I want you to know that. Okay. But I want you to know that the most professional and the most powerful occultists on our planet today, the ones that are literally orchestrating and controlling the world, even the ones that you probably hate the most, consider the elites, they're aware of the Qliphothic realm. They're aware of this dark maze, and it's utilized on a daily basis. Okay, I promise you. Okay, that's also what the Watchers are. So once again, it's like when you get into the Qliphoth, you're dealing with a dark maze, and you have to go through that entire maze to get to the other side. And on the other side of the dark maze, you enter into the void. You enter into space. And while you're in that void, while you're in that space, you finally realize that's where your soul was communicating to you. Your soul was existing in that dark energy space, which is in between the constellations, in between the stars, in between the planets. And then you can reconnect fully with your soul, and then your soul takes you to the source, which is literally where all of it was created. It's where the dark energy even came from. The source is just the all. It's the all and it's the nothing. Okay? So this is just a little bit of an analogy that I'm trying to create, or some sort of a visual that I'm trying to give you to help you understand this process of what the Watcher goes through, and then what the Watcher understands about themselves, but also about the multiverse in general and the real world. Okay? When I say real world, I mean the mass collective, the society, the culture. Okay? So the Watchers, we go through the underworld. We understand the underworld. We understand it's actually the natural process of evolution that every single being has to eventually go through to get to their primal nature, to literally step into their own personal power and become a god in their own right. So because the Watchers are so aware of the underworld, they're so aware of the Qliphoth, the Watchers can use the underworld. They can use the Qliphoth in a strategic way to essentially, you could say, take energy from the human species, okay, to basically set up the multiverse in a way where there is constant Qliphothic programming, constant demonic programming, using symbols, using archetypes to place the human species into the dark areas of the multiverse without them being aware of where they're being placed, and promoting the concept and promoting the belief that they should identify with their egos simultaneously. Okay, this is a beautiful and this is a perfect formula to completely trap someone within the multiverse, having them think logically, I am a good person, I got to do the right thing, I am the sun, I am light, I am here, I stand for justice. When in reality, the true nature of their soul has to do with everything that they're not embracing within themselves, which is the deep unconscious and subconscious, and they are repressing those aspects of their primal nature in order to structure that level of an ego where they identify themselves as being the good guy or the good person, the person who's right, who's doing the right thing for the world, because they think that's what God wants. They think that's what the source is all about, but the source is actually not about that. The source is about positive and negative, okay, creation and destruction, and it needs to have both in correspondence to create evolutionary power. No different than how a battery functions with a positive charge and a negative charge. You just put it in whatever you want to turn on, and all you care is that, does this battery make my item work? Does it make my flashlight turn on? Okay, that's exactly how the source functions. It's not about, oh, we need to be positive. We need to spread the word of positivity. We need to be uplifting all the time. No, there is a just as important aspect of destruction that needs to be in place as well as the positive to create that proper balance for evolutionary power. Okay. So once again, the Watcher is aware of that. And the Watcher is so aware of the underworld, so aware, basically, when I say that, of the dark areas of the multiverse. Literally, the Watchers are aware. I'm aware of the structure and the pathways that the human being has to go through in order to really get to their true nature, to really get back to the void and then reconnect to the source. I'm aware of this as a Watcher because I went through the experience myself, and it's a psychic experience. It's an emotional experience. It's a mental, physical experience on all these different levels, and it is very strange. Let's put it that way. It's very strange because you're going to get physical manifestation while you're going through the experience. You're going to get emotional manifestation. You're going to feel different. You're going to get psychological manifestation. You're going to see things. You're going to talk to people that are reflections of this dark area of the multiverse that have to do with those deep primal archetypes and the primal entities that are the figures, that are the gatekeepers within these areas of the multiverse. And you will literally see these archetypes, these entities become manifest, and you will have conversations with them. I'm not just talking about psychically. I literally mean on a physical level as well. Okay? It's very strange. If you're not aware of what it is that I'm saying now, then you definitely don't want to. You definitely would not make it in the this level of initiation or this level of self-development. You have to be at least aware of these things, at least to an intuitive level, when you're going through the underworld. But once again, the point that I'm trying to make is that the Watchers understand that. We understand there is a real hidden structure that orchestrates how someone gets to their highest potential, literally how someone steps into their own godhood. And it all comes from the awareness of what I'm telling you. This is the big key, which is the true nature of the soul, which is coming from void, is birthed from the dark mother. Okay? When you understand that, you stop placing yourself as the good guy or as the justice bringer or as the right person. Okay, the light, so to speak. You start to realize your true nature is actually in that deep area of your unconscious and subconscious. And the entire process of getting back in touch with that is shedding your ego, letting go of your ego, unprogramming what you've been programmed to believe about yourself and recognize you're actually nothing. Okay? That's when you get to the void. And then when you get to the void and you achieve nothing, you're now formless and you can be everything. That's when you link into the source. Okay, so this is something that all the Watchers understand. And because we are the primal observers, which is where the name the Watcher comes from, we observe the mass collective, we observe the human species, and we structure the multiverse in such a way that generates the proper amount of energy for evolutionary processes. Okay, so what you listening to this right now may deem as evil and as wrong and as dark and as satanic and that's so elitist and that's so bad, in reality, the Watchers structure the multiverse according to the dark mother within themselves that then generates the proper amount of polarity to create evolution. So I know what I said can go over a lot of people's heads. If you need to rewatch that part, then go ahead and rewatch it. But what I'm saying basically is we are in evolution right now on this planet as a human being. Your soul understands evolution because it was birthed from the dark mother. That is literally the first created avatar to create evolutionary processes. The dark mother, the black dragon, is the first entity that ever existed that created creation and destruction. Okay, and it basically came from the source itself. Okay, now this dark mother entity gave birth to the soul of the human species. And not only just the soul of the human species, but it also gave birth to other entities as well, other spirits as well, everything, literally everything. Okay. So when you are getting in touch with your primal soul's nature, you are re-linking to the Dark Mother. You are re-linking to the Black Dragon that created everything. And you're starting to recognize that you are the Dark Mother yourself. You are that same first dark primal feminine energy that created everything. So at that point, you basically become an avatar of the Dark Mother yourself, which is the first entity that was branched off or created from the source. Okay, so the Watchers understand this, and we embrace this. Okay, and because we become the dark feminine energy, because we become the Dark Mother, the Tiamat, the Black Dragon, everything we do is based on evolution. Okay, so everything we do has a purpose and it has a reason that is based in the science of creating evolutionary power between the positive and the negative pole. So if you don't understand where we are in the cycle of evolution, and you look at the world today and you think it's evil, and you think you're so powerful and self-important that you have the ability to shift the evolutionary process of these natural cycles of evolution, then you're fooling yourself, and you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're actually placing yourself in an archetypal energetic position to open yourself up to more harm and damage coming from the deep unconscious and subconscious of your own being. Okay, basically, the Dark Mother will start devouring you because you're not aware that your soul is birthed from the Dark Mother itself. So you're trying to stand up in society, you're trying to stand up with an identity, saying, I am this, I am right, I know the pathway, I can do this, I'm going to create this, I'm going to shift the events, I'm going to be the one that changes things. When in reality, the Watchers sit back and we laugh at you. And we actually structure the multiverse in a certain way during certain periods of evolution where certain human beings fall into these types of traps where they do identify with their ego and then they get destroyed, similar to the Christ archetype who spent his whole life healing, focusing on positive energy, helping his fellow man, not really embracing his unconscious and subconscious, and then having everyone that he loved turned against him last second and then getting sacrificed on the cross for all his sins. This is a program that is meant to create power for evolution. And it's not a good thing and it's not a bad thing. It's just, do you want to be the Jesus Christ? Do you want to be the person getting sacrificed? Or do you want to be the person who's establishing and placing these types of programs into the multiverse that generate the proper amount of power for evolution in general? Okay, this is what the Watchers do. And this is why the Watchers are looked at as dark and demonic and evil. Okay, but really we're just operating based on evolutionary principles, and we're doing what's necessary to structure the multiverse in an evolutionary way to create the proper amount of power. Okay, so to get in alignment with the Watcher within yourself, the ultimate observer within yourself, to get into alignment with the deep unconscious and subconscious of your own mind and of the mass collective's mind, and ultimately to get back in touch with your primal soul, coming to the awareness that you are birthed from the womb of chaos, that you are birthed in dark energy. Your soul was created in and from dark energy as a base, as a foundation. Okay? To re-step into that awareness is the path of getting further connected to your soul, which then puts you in that position of being a Watcher and having evolution work for you. Okay, so for example, in the midst of the pandemic that I've been going through, while most of the mass collective is suffering and going through all these challenging experiences, this is when my business is thriving. This is when I'm thriving in all areas of my life. Okay. When things are going wrong and when people are getting caught up with politics and what's going on with the news, and they're identifying with, this is where we're headed in the world, this is what's happening, the Watchers are thriving. We're feeding on all of this energy regardless, okay? Because we understand it has nothing to do with the left and the right. It has nothing to do with identifying with right and the wrong and the good and the bad. We understand that there needs to be this polarity balance of the positive and the negative. And when we're at this cycle in evolution, where we are in a Kali Yuga, there are going to be structures that are placed in the multiverse today that are designed to fool the ego of the human being to buy into that structure and then devour the human, and devour the ego. And if the human is attached to their ego, it will destroy their physical body as well. But even when that takes place, there's huge amounts of energy that emanates when a physical life is taken. Okay, so this is the awareness of the Watchers. And once again, it has nothing to do with being good. It has nothing to do with being evil. It is the process of evolution, and we are all connected to it on our primal soul level. The key is to remember that and allow yourself to break through those barriers of fear to get back in touch with your soul. And as I mentioned throughout this video, that comes through deep level occult initiation, going into the multiverse, entering into those pathways that reflect and represent your deep unconscious and subconscious mind, as well as the mass collectives around you. And then you can break out of that final maze and get back to your soul and then the source, and then recognize you are the source, you are the Dark Mother, and then you become a physical avatar of the Black Dragon, of the Dark Mother on this planet, which means evolution always works for you. The deep unconscious, subconscious of your mind and the mass collective's mind always works for you. All the angelic entities, all the demonic entities, they all work for you, because at that point, you are the avatar which created all of them. Okay? It's the key. This is the secret. So I'm going to leave it there. I definitely shared enough information in this video. So we'll leave it there. If you enjoyed this video, obviously,